At the turn of the 20th century, the nations of Europe had been at peace with one another for nearly 30 years. An entire generation had grown up ignorant of the horrors of war. Some Europeans believed that progress had made war a thing of the past. Yet, in little more than a decade, a massive war would engulf Europe and spread across the globe. Efforts to outlaw war and achieve a permanent peace had been gaining momentum in Europe since the middle of the 19th century. By 1900, hundreds of peace organizations were active. In addition, peace congresses convened regularly between 1843 and 1907. Below the surface of peace and goodwill that existed in the early 1900s, several forces were at work that would help propel Europe into war. These four forces would lead to World War I, the most devastating and destructive conflict in history to that time. The four long-term causes of World War I were nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and alliances. The first and one of the most important causes of World War I was nationalism, or a deep devotion to one's nation. Nationalism can serve as a unifying force within a country. However, it also can cause intense competition between nations, with each seeking to overpower the other. By the turn of the 20th century, a fierce rivalry had developed among Europe's great powers. Those nations were Germany, Austria-Hungary, Great Britain, Russia, Italy, and France. This increasing rivalry among European nations stemmed from several sources. Competition for materials and markets was one. Great Britain, home of the Industrial Revolution, had long been Europe's leader in industry, finance, and shipping. After 1850, however, other nations began to challenge Britain's power. One such nation was Germany. Germany's many new industries made its economy the fastest-growing one on the continent. As a result, Germany competed with Great Britain for industrial dominance. Nationalistic rivalries also grew out of territorial disputes. France, for example, had never gotten over the loss of Alsace-Lorraine to Germany in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. Austria-Hungary and Russia both tried to dominate in the Balkans, a region in southeast Europe. Within the Balkans, the intense nationalism of Serbs, Bulgarians, Romanians, and other ethnic groups led to demands for independence. Another force that helped set the stage for war in Europe was imperialism. The nations of Europe competed fiercely for colonies in Africa and Asia. The quest for colonies sometimes pushed European nations to the brink of war. In 1905, and again in 1911, Germany and France nearly fought over who would control Morocco and northern Africa. With most of Europe supporting France, Germany eventually backed down. As European countries continued to compete for overseas empires, however, their sense of rivalry and mistrust of one another deepened. Beginning in the 1890s, increasing nationalism led to a dangerous European arms race. The nations of Europe believed that to be truly great, they needed to have a powerful military. The policy of glorifying military power and keeping an army prepared for war was known as militarism. By 1914, all the great powers except Britain had large standing armies. In addition, military experts stressed the importance of being able to quickly mobilize, or organize and move troops in case of a war. Generals in each country developed highly detailed plans for such a mobilization. Having a large and strong standing army made citizens feel patriotic. However, it also frightened some people. As early as 1895, Frederick Passy, a peace activist and future Nobel Peace Prize winner, expressed a concern that many shared. The entire able-bodied population are preparing to massacre one another. Though no one, it is true, wants to attack, and everybody protests his love of peace and determination to maintain it, yet the whole world feels that it only requires some unforeseen incident, some unpreventable accident, for the spark to fall in a flash and blow all Europe sky high. The growing international rivalries had led to the creation of several military alliances among the great powers as early as the 1870s. This alliance system had been designed to keep peace in Europe, but it would instead help push the continent into war. Between 1864 and 1871, Prussia's blood and iron Chancellor Otto von Bismarck freely used war to unify Germany. After 1871, however, Bismarck declared Germany to be a satisfied power. He then turned his energies to maintaining peace in Europe. Bismarck saw France as the greatest threat to peace. He believed that France still wanted revenge for its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. Bismarck's first goal, therefore, was to isolate France. As long as it is without allies, Bismarck stressed, France poses no danger to us. In 1879, Bismarck formed the dual alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. 3 years later, Italy joined the two countries, forming the Triple Alliance. In 1887, Bismarck took yet another possible ally away from France by making a treaty with Russia. Bismarck knew that his network of alliances was unstable. Two of Germany's allies, Russia and Austria, were themselves bitter rivals for the Balkans. The slightest shift in diplomatic winds could blow apart the fragile web of treaties. In 1890, Germany's foreign policy changed dramatically. That year, Kaiser Wilhelm II, who 2 years earlier had become ruler of Germany, forced Bismarck to resign. A proud and stubborn man, Wilhelm II did not wish to share power with anyone. Besides wanting to assert his own power, the new Kaiser was eager to show the world just how mighty Germany had become. The army was his greatest pride. "I and the army were born for one another," Wilhelm declared shortly after taking power. Wilhelm set Germany on a new course. As we saw a moment ago, he forced Bismarck to resign in 1890, and then let the treaty Bismarck had negotiated with Russia lapse. Russia responded by forming a defensive military alliance with France in 1891. Such an alliance had been Bismarck's greatest fear. A war with either Russia or France would now make Germany the enemy of both. Germany would then be forced to fight a two-front war, or a war on both its eastern and western borders. Next, the impulsive Kaiser, envious of Britain's large empire and mighty navy, decided to challenge Britain. During the 1890s, Germany built its own small colonial empire. At the same time, Wilhelm started a tremendous shipbuilding program in an effort to make the German navy equal to Britain's. Alarmed, Great Britain began to enlarge its own fleet. In 1904, Britain formed an entente, or alliance, with France. In 1907, Britain made another entente, this time with both France and Russia. The Triple Entente, as it was called, did not bind Britain to fight with France and Russia. However, it did almost certainly ensure that Britain would not fight against them. By 1907, two rival camps existed in Europe. On one side was the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. On the other side was the Triple Entente of Great Britain, France, and Russia. A dispute between two rival powers could now draw the entire continent into war. Nowhere was a dispute more likely to occur than on the Balkan Peninsula. This mountainous peninsula in the southeastern corner of Europe was home to an assortment of ethnic groups. With a long history of nationalist uprisings and ethnic clashes, the Balkans were known as the powder keg of Europe. By the early 1900s, the Ottoman Empire, which included the Balkan region, was in rapid decline. While some Balkan groups struggled to free themselves from Ottoman rule, others already had succeeded in breaking away from their Turkish rulers. These peoples had formed new nations, including Bulgaria, Greece, Montenegro, Romania, and Serbia. Nationalism was a powerful force in these countries. Each group longed to extend its borders. Serbia, for example, had a large Slavic population. Serbia hoped to absorb all the Slavs on the Balkan Peninsula. On this issue of Serbian nationalism, Russia and Austria-Hungary were in direct conflict. Russia, itself a mostly Slavic nation, supported Serbian nationalism. Austria, which feared rebellion among its small Slavic population, felt threatened by Serbia's growth. In addition, both Russia and Austria-Hungary had hoped to fill the power vacuum created by the Ottoman decline in the Balkans. In 1908, Austria annexed or took over Bosnia and Herzegovina. These were two Balkan areas with large Slavic populations. Serbian leaders, who had sought to rule these provinces, were outraged. The possibility of war arose. Russia offered Serbia full support, but the offer meant little. Russia was totally unprepared for war. When Germany stood firmly behind Austria, Russia and Serbia had to back down. By 1914, tensions in the Balkan region were once again on the rise. Serbia had emerged victorious from several local conflicts. As a result, the nation had gained additional territory and a new confidence. It was more eager than ever to take Bosnia and Herzegovina away from Austria. In response, Austria-Hungary vowed to crush any Serbian effort to undermine its authority in the Balkans. Into this poisoned atmosphere of mutual dislike and mistrust stepped the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Along with his wife Sophie, on June 28, 1914, the Archduke paid a state visit to Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. It was to be their last. The royal pair were shot at point-blank range as they rode through the streets of Sarajevo in an open car. The Archduke's killer was Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old member of the Black Hand. The Black Hand was a secret society committed to ridding Bosnia of Austrian rule. Because Princip was a Serbian, Austria decided to use the murders as an excuse to punish Serbia. An angry Kaiser Wilhelm II urged Austria to be aggressive, and he offered Germany's unconditional support. In effect, this gave Austria license to do what it wanted with Serbia. On July 23rd, Austria presented Serbia with an ultimatum. An ultimatum is a list of demands that, if not met, will lead to serious consequences. The ultimatum was deliberately harsh. Demands included an end to all anti-Austrian activity. In addition, Serbian leaders would have to allow Austrian officials into their country to conduct an investigation into the assassinations. Serbia knew that refusing the ultimatum would lead to war against the more powerful Austria. Therefore, Serbian leaders agreed to most of Austria's demands. They offered to have several others settled by an international conference. Austria, however, was in no mood to negotiate. The nation's leaders, it seemed, had already settled on war. On July 28th, Austria rejected Serbia's offer and declared war. That same day, Serbia's ally, Russia, took action. Russian leaders ordered the mobilization of troops toward the Austrian border. Leaders all over Europe suddenly took alarm. The fragile European stability seemed about to collapse. The British foreign minister, the Italian government, and even Kaiser Wilhelm himself urged Austria and Russia to negotiate, but it was too late. The machinery of war had been set in motion.